Well, welcome officially to the RPG to real life. This panel is meant to explore the idea of skills that are learned in the course of participating in role playing games being transferable to everyday life. What skills and attributes do players and those who guide them, such as DMs, pick up from their hobbies? Will this help them in their careers, relationships, and in the outside world? So, I'm going to go ahead and have everybody introduce themselves first. Jamie, if you want to start.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jamie, and I am an English teacher. I teach English 10 mostly. And so I have a little bit of perspective on how the skills involved in role playing and working on an RPG together can help young people in school and how that translates to careers too.
Nice.
Plus, I play D&D all the time.
Right?
Who doesn't?
And Dave.
My name is Dave. I am an accountant. I've been a manager of people, and I'm in most of our productions because, yeah, I like playing D&D. It's a lot of fun. I like my friends.
All right. And Nick.
I have worked in customer service. I'm trying to figure out how to word this without saying, "Oh, I used to be a waiter, and now I just stand behind a cash register." But I've worked, facing customers pretty much all my life. So being able to, I think communicate is gonna give me a little bit of experience talking about this. I'm also part of the Nerd Asylum and in one of our productions.
And Abon.
Hi. So I'm from 20 Sided Adventures podcast. So I play D&D quite a bit. Otherwise, outside of that, I used to be an early education teacher, and then the virus happened, so don't know where I am now. Otherwise, I've done a lot of jobs, and I'm an artist on the side.
All right. And Bran.
Hi, I'm Bran. I run Spirit of the Wild Candles. We make natural, nerdy candles. I would say D&D has had a massive impact in every stretch of my life, and all the skills learned from it. So, yeah.
Right. Well, we'll go ahead and dive in with the first question here, which, sorry, I'm Joseph Timmis. I'm your moderator for this panel. We had the original moderator had something come up and couldn't participate, so I stepped up and I have the notes. So I'm just going to be reading from the notes from the original moderator. But it is very well organized, so I think this is going to go well. What do you think is the first skill that someone picks up when participating in an RPG? And I'm not going to really call out names or anything, just kind of dive in if you have something to say, and we'll kind of go that way.
Communication. Talking to your team and your DM and communicating would definitely be the number one skill picked up. Because if you can't communicate, you can't play TTRPGs because you have to talk to people to do that.
Yeah.
No, well put. I would definitely say critical thinking. It has to be a huge one of, just being able to shift your mind from what would be an obvious, decision and, really opening up potential of different angles you can take on anything.
And tagging onto that, like problem solving.
I mean, for a first thing, all yours sound great. I was like, yeah, I went through all three of those in my head. What else can I add?
I will say all of those things from an educator standpoint are skills that schools are specifically shifting their curriculums to focus on, because those are the skills that are going to help people in their careers. So, like you said, communication. You said, Bran, what did you say?
Critical thinking.
Critical thinking. Thank you. And then Nick, is it?
Yeah, problem solving.
Problem solving. And then I'll also add collaboration, which is really closely tied to communication, because like he said, you can't play the game if you can't communicate what you want your character to do, or if you can't talk to your DM. And so being able to collaborate is also one of those skills that is necessary, that I think you develop early on.
Tagging on to that question, is this skill that you've named, is it helpful in your career and in your personal life, and if so, how? I think we've kind of already brushed that, but that's
So I'll go first again. So for me, communication. I'm an accountant. It's a really weird job for me because I like to talk, and accountants are famously stereotyped to be very quiet shut-ins that can't talk to anyone. So being able to communicate is very important, and being able to give what I always tell anybody that I talk to about work is the elevator speech. You get into a room with a CFO in an elevator and you want to have a new project and you have 3 minutes to get your point across. Being able to communicate effectively to someone and convey your point or show them what you're seeing in your head is so important in the workplace, and it's something that we foster so much in D&D and in tabletop, because you speak to showing someone a scene or communicating how you want to pick a lock or how you want to climb underneath a table and get somebody or whatever you're trying to do. It's communicating effectively is so important, I think, in the workplace, and it's something that we foster every time we play a D&D or TTRPG.
what about critical thinking? How do you utilize that in your career, your professional life, and your personal life?
As far as my professional life, I'm gonna out myself saying critical thinking isn't the greatest skill I've gotten from D&D. My job is an odd one. You all have very adult jobs. I am hawking candles at festivals and fairs and conventions. So honestly, the theatrics and the role playing essence of D&D has really been the biggest benefit to my line of work, that I can go out there and in front of thousands of strangers and be able to ad lib, be able to take in a character and a persona, something that'll bring people in to our shop, and whatever it is, you can kind of read a person and go, this is the attitude, this is they want a jovial bard to produce approach them, or they're there in their Viking attire, go up there big and talk to them, show them the math, the strength of this candle, and it's definitely helped being able to read an audience.
Okay, so being able to read people and kind of see where they stand.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think being able to pick up on like the energy that people are putting out there and being able to reciprocate that, or reciprocate something that you think will speak to them in a way, is going to it's really important to communication to be able to talk to people how they want to be talked to if you want some sort of positive response from them. And I think D&D helps a lot with that, getting to know different personalities and how to interact with those.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like how it's helped me out in real life. Well, I used to be very much the shut in, don't like talking people, very shy. So, like, being introduced into Dungeons and Dragons, well, for one thing, I have to talk to my friends more often rather than on one on one. It's definitely a group setting. Um, so I guess it just kind of helped me open up to be better at. Well, look at this. I'm in a panel right now. So,
Perfect example.
it's been an improvement over the years for sure. I'm more confident at speaking. Not the best at speaking just yet, but I'd like to think have made strides since high school. And just like I'll leave it at that. I'll see if it comes up later.
Okay.
Sure. I guess I'll touch on collaboration real quick. To kind of touch on what everybody else was saying, all of these skills are important, I think, no matter what job you end up having in the future, especially collaboration. I have a lot of students who hate group projects, right? And we probably all look back on high school and remember hating having to work with a group and kids who don't do their share and all of that stuff. But learning how to work with people, even people you might not like very much, can be fostered by RPGs, and the fact that you have to communicate or collaborate with your team, with your party, in order to accomplish your goals. And so, like, if you've ever been in a group where the different characters in your party wanted to do very different things, it kind of breaks down the game and can make it difficult sometimes. I think it's the same in your jobs. Even a job where you're making candles, where you're an artist and a salesman, you still have to be able to collaborate with maybe the person who makes your labels if you don't do that yourself, or the person you do that yourself. uh, do you have somebody who helps you make them, or do you do it all by yourself?
So she doesn't punch me in the head when she gets home. I have a team.
Yeah.
My
All right,
wife
there you go.
certainly does.
Even if
No,
it's
I do have help.
okay, so even if it's collaborating with like one other person, and if you're an accountant, then you definitely have to collaborate with other people in your office, your superiors. So even people who think, well, I'm just going to get a job where I can kind of just work on my own and do my own thing, there's always going to be somebody that you have to collaborate with. And so I think that's a super important skill that people can pick up from RPGs.
Definitely. So I want to do just a little step further on that, if I could.
Mhm. Go ahead.
I think so many people with our interest are very often solo acts. They are, not huge social butterflies as it is. And I think one of the best skills that can be gained from playing in a group is actually just relying on someone else.
Mm,
When you think about, oh, I've had this character for, a couple years. This character means a lot. It's built it. And this character's life is now potentially in the hands of one of the other people at the table that I have to rely on them, and
yeah.
trust in them.
Your character's story is in part developed by the other players.
Mm-hmm.
You're not creating that story by yourself.
That's a really good point. Yeah.
So, have you used an RPG to improve on skills that you already know?
Yes.
And would you elaborate on that, please?
No.
No, I'm already perfect in every way, so I just bring
Totally
perfection to
fair.
the table.
Does
Okay,
anyone else want to
Valtier.
start, or should I start again?
No, it's definitely opened me up to being able to communicate better because, like a lot of us, I was an extreme shut-in when I was younger. Like I shied away from every social interaction that I could just because I felt so awkward and like I had no idea what was going on in life, and so I just kept to myself and didn't want to impose on anybody. But I've definitely opened up a lot more since starting to play D&D. Like I have this whole group of friends now that I didn't have before, and it's been a great experience. All things considered.
Yeah, for
Um,
me, it's. Oh, go ahead.
no, you go ahead.
Just for me, it's been organization. Um, I started DMing fairly recently, and I found that I need to use a lot more tools to help me keep myself organized. So now I use Evernote for all my DM notes and for what in God's name my party is doing and how to get places. And I use a to-do list, so I make sure that it's like I need to prepare for Monday. Make sure I prepare for Monday. Make sure I do these things. And I started using those in my work life too. It's like I have when I do meetings, so do Zoom meetings all the time. Everybody does now. And I feel like I need to make sure that I take productive notes that I can look back and go, I've written 5 lines and I know exactly what the meeting was about, or I know my boss needs XYZ done, and I have them in order on my to-do list. So I know I can go, what do I have to do today? These are the things I have to hit. Then I can expand upon them in my notes, just helping me focus and not be all over here, but just be right here.
I have to give you that one. It's done wonders for my organization, because I think generally before D&D it was just sort of, nah, it's all in there. I got it. And learning that that's not the case, and being introduced to the wonderful world of spreadsheets, and actually then using that in business. So
This was. Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
You can go
I
ahead.
just wanted to add on to it, just because when I used to work at my early education center, people would want to be just tell me things, and I'll be like, no, we have to write it down because you want something, they want something, I have to do something as well. Let's just write it down. Because as much as I'd like to think, oh yeah, I can handle everything, I've learned over the years it's generally just not possible. So I've got my coworkers to start giving me notes, as well as get them to start taking them notes too, because I tell them something and then they forget.
Note taking is very important. I wish you guys could tell my students that.
Yeah.
So this was
college, so it takes a while.
this was not one of the skills we talked about, but patience. D&D has actually helped me become a more patient collaborator because I tend to want to take control of situations, and especially like when I am working on group projects, I kind of want to be in charge. I kind of want to have a hand in everything because I like to know what's going on. And in D&D, if you're the player who is always the first to act and always telling the party what to do and always trying to take control of the situation, that can make the story not as fun for everybody else because they don't feel like they get to participate as much. So I've been really working lately on stepping back and trying to like play characters who are less assertive so that I can let the other people I play with um you know have more of a voice. I'm not going to be the first person to jump up and say, "Oh, this is what we should do" all the time. That doesn't mean I'm never going to do that. But to have patience with like the other people you're playing with and kind of like put some decisions in their hands and letting go a little bit, I think that can be really helpful in the workplace. And I've even started to do that in my classroom a little bit, having a little bit more faith in students taking leadership of their own activities and things like that. So it's helped me as a teacher too.
That's awesome.
very cool.
Yes, Abon.
I just raised my hand now.
Hey, Bob.
We had teachers. Why did we not think of this?
Yeah. Just to add on to that, just because I know one of my more recent not on podcast games, I know I would take lead, like as a player, but like from my patience and everything else that's built up for my whole entire life for this moment, it's kind of like giving opportunity for my teammates to step up. Like, hey, let me suggest this to you, so you become more of the outspoken character. Because some people just, like the rest of us, all drawn back and haven't exactly found their voices yet. So then, if the longer you've been in, the more you can be like, let me handhold and help you forward, kind of thing. So, as a teacher for early education, let me literally hold your hand and help you kick the ball or throw the thing, count your numbers, or just kind of like help lead you into other areas.
That's a really good point.
Mm-hmm.
I think good DMs do that too, and like ask the quieter players what their character is thinking or doing, just to kind of like bring them in and give them some ownership over the game.
And it's really great to see how quick someone who was, the wallflower at the beginning of that game, that when a DM, engages them and tries to bring them into it, how, a couple hours in, they're the loudest and the most forward of the bunch. I'd love seeing that happen.
Tying into that, we've talked about critical thinking and the collaboration and patience and a lot of that. How do you think you can utilize these skills that you've recognized in an RPG to help your fellow players recognize these skills and kind of practice them during a game?
Well,
I think. Oh no, go ahead.
I think before you do that, you have to work on communication first, because you have to be aware of it. You have to have that, what we call metacognition in education, that awareness that you want to work on your own skills before you can necessarily improve them or keep progress on them. So communication has to come first.
Yeah, and kind of taking a step back into how the DM will engage the quiet player a lot of the times and try and bring them forward. What I try to do as a player, I've never DM'd a game, but when I'm playing a game, I try to find those little hints, because a lot of times players will drop hints as to what they're feeling or thinking, and I try to pay really close attention to those things, and as my character address them within the game, say, so hey, I noticed that your attitude has changed a little bit recently, Thorgnac. How are you feeling? What's going on? I try to bring them in the role play out as their character, and just try and pay attention to what their like mental storylines are.
I think on exactly that note, the longer you've played D&D, the less ideally you feel the need to be the front runner, the powerhouse of the team, that you're comfortable with your character, you're comfortable in that situation, that you're going to be more willing to get the quiet new person, kind of edge them along. I bet you could climb that. You look pretty dexterous, and. So I definitely think it's one of those things where it comes with time that you become comfortable and you realize you don't have to be the center of attention, and it helps you elevate someone else.
Yeah, I think as a DM and as a player, it's just encouragement. For me, it's always like if someone did something good or RP'd something awesome, as a character, just engage them and be like, that was really impressive. I can't believe you did that. Or everybody's doing this, but you did this other really important thing. That's awesome. Like I didn't even think of that. We all went this direction, but that is just as important. Like if you address it as you're in character, it feels more genuine, I feel, or it feels like the person can accept it as the character and themselves. Because most of us, especially if you have any type of mental illness like depression or anxiety, we're awkward with compliments. Someone says, "Hey, you're doing a great job," and you're like, "Am I? Are you just trying to be nice to me?" So I feel when you address it as a character or in a position where you're like, "Good job," like, "Whoa, you did something really great there. Thank you for doing this good thing as a team." Then it encourages them to accept the compliment and accept that confidence and encourage them to do more.
Yeah, and then tying it to real life, the more you learn how to accept a compliment as a character, you can start to accept compliments as a real person and recognize that someone's complimenting me. There's nothing negative about that. I don't have to feel bad about being complimented or congratulated.
I think maybe as you communicate more in character in your games, and those more nervous people get comfortable around you, then you can bridge from fantasy to reality and start like communicating them and helping them like with their critical thinking or communication skills or their people skills or whatever that may be. You can start talking about that in a more direct way once you have made them feel comfortable in the game, and like you've built that relationship with them.
Just to add on more to that, it's just I know some D&D games that's where I first meet a person. I was like, oh, I'm pretending to be someone else when I first say hi to you. I wouldn't want to like address critical thinking or communication with this person, but have to do it in character. But like after playing the games, obviously, if you play it enough, you'll become friends and start talking after games or in the little break section in between games, and you'll be more confident to be like, hey, here's this cool skill I've noticed in you, or whatever you'd like to say on that.
Oh, well said.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah. It made me actually think of another thing that we haven't talked about: conflict management.
That's
Yes.
been on the brain. I was waiting for it.
Yeah, yeah. It just popped in my head when you were talking, and I was like, yeah, that's actually an extremely important part of being able to play as a group together, and in real life, being able to handle and manage conflicts in a productive way.
Yeah, non-conflict conflict management is great. And I mean that
Non-conflict
because
conflict management.
so when people say conflict, they always imagine, especially in like a fantasy setting or in a TTRPG, you manage go into battle and you're going to fight the enemy, and they're not going to deal with the conflict at an emotional or social level. And I know Joe knows, especially for like every character that I've been playing lately, is I don't want to fight. I have fighting is a last ditch effort. I do not want to engage unless I have to, because I think it's interesting to.
Oh no.
Oh,
That's
no.
so interesting.
It's
It's so interesting the internet couldn't handle it.
Welcome back. You're muted, it seems. There you go.
Okay.
Sorry, not sure what happened there. Yeah, so you have in real life you have to deal with people that you can't punch or take a sword or use a spell. You have to talk to people, and everyone has their own motivations. And maybe someone who's an evil orc overlord is really just a guy trying to get his home back. Maybe I not don't use any names, but like maybe Tiffany over in a different department is being mean to you. Maybe it's probably not even you. Maybe something's going on in her personal life and it has nothing to do with you. Or maybe they're getting pressure from their boss. And how do you work with them and deal with whatever issue? You have to be able to communicate and talk and deal with their conflict as adults, because we can't just take a sword. We'll go to jail for the rest of our lives. At the end of it. So yeah, conflict management is so important. And so like we deal with conflict all the time in our real lives. We just don't consider it conflict. But it really is. Anytime that there's an argument or a disagreement, that's conflict. That's a problem in the wheel. It's going the opposite way and not going the right way.
Yeah, you can, just like you can find other solutions in your game to um maybe like that orc overlord you were talking about, he's just trying to get his home back. Maybe there's a diplomatic solution. So that kind of creative out of the box thinking could help people in real life. But I also have a little story about some conflict that happened in my D&D group that might help translate to that kind of problem solving in real life. So um, I actually play D&D with a group of friends that I've known for a really long time. I rarely play with strangers, so that's a little bit of a unique situation for me. My friends and I have been getting together once a week for like 8 years, uh, and we play D&D a lot of that time that we get together. So we already knew each other pretty well, and so our conflict was that people could not stay in character while we were playing because they just wanted to like make jokes and have fun, but then we could never get anything done. So we had to have multiple conversations as a group that were sometimes uncomfortable about the fact that people were getting out of character too often and we weren't able to like stay focused on our game. And so we came up with a solution together that we would start meeting an hour earlier so that we could like chill and catch up and like talk and joke around, and then we'd start playing. And it actually really helped. So having those kinds of um, conflict management situations where the DM has to get involved, or where you just have to be honest with your group or your team members or whatever, doesn't always have to end in a well, we just can't work together anymore situation. You know, it can you can come up with really good solutions in your workplace or in your game.
Can confirm on that hour ahead though. That does wonders to get the game running. You're spot on there.
Yeah, I think that's probably a pretty common issue that friends have that play together. Is like you're just excited to be with each other, and you just want to joke around and have fun, and maybe the game takes a back seat to that. For some people.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, when I tell Ginge over, I point over there because that's his desk. When I tell him like, "Hey, I'm recording," or "Hey, I'm playing a game," I normally tell him, I was like, "Oh yeah, it's gonna be a couple hours because we have about an hour of effing around time." I don't know what level of like cursing I can do, so I'll just try to be friendly. But I'll tell him, I was like, it's going to be an extra hour because I'm going to be hanging out with everybody, whether it's before the session or after the session or 30 minutes before and after. But I know it happens as a player.
So, what is some advice that you would give to someone who maybe wants to work on themselves and their skills in an RPG setting, but is not sure where to start?
I would step out of your comfort zone with your character creation. I think a lot of people, they find a niche. They like being edgy rogues, or they like being the barbarian that hits things, or they like being the righteous paladin, or they find a niche and they find a home that they feel comfortable in, and they keep playing that character over and over and over again. And they play the same character and the same person, just in different bodies across different characters. But when the righteous paladin becomes the druid who doesn't know how to talk to people, or the barbarian that just wants to hit things becomes the bard that has to convince the group to talk to each other because they're not good at that. They can only talk because they only have charisma. Like it gets them out of their comfort zone from the start and establishes that they now have to learn to be in this new body that they're not comfortable in.
Well said.
Really good point.
Yeah.
Forces people to have a new perspective. Maybe be more empathetic to those sorts of characters as people in real life.
Yeah, when I
think that was the lesson of the meeting here. Wow.
You get the golf clap on that one. That was good.
When I create my characters, I try to give them just one trait that I don't have as myself. Like, like we've all said, we're not super social. So my most recent character has really high charisma. He's forward facing a lot. He talks to a lot of people, and he has the confidence to do that. Whereas, I don't in real life. I'm forced to talk to people by my job. But I always try to incorporate just one, like even a little thing that I wouldn't normally do as myself, just to push that comfort zone, push those boundaries a little bit.
Yeah, to add on that, just to add on that one extra trait from the normal typical spot you like to be in. I know I'm a person that doesn't like change that dramatically. So if I just add one thing, then for this character, the next one I'll make will be like, well, maybe it's two more things from the first one I've ever made, and then it's 3 and 4 and however many more, to the point where my first bard that I ever made, very dramatic to what I am as a person, to the current bard I'm playing, they're like two separate people. Because one of them is more of, hi, I'm a flirty bard, let me seduce everything now because I'm more confident to do that. Whereas my first bard is just like, I just want to be friends. Let's try to do that.
On the other side of that coin, something I always do with any of my characters is I put some flaw or weakness in there that I
Mhm.
feel I can relate to. And I think
Mhm.
that works so well when you're seeing them, grow as a person and going against that, weakness that they have and figuring it out and how to work past it. I think that helps us, find that same strength inside.
That's really cool.
Yeah, flaws are very
Yeah.
important to making a character feel real.
Absolutely.
I'm gonna kind of direct this question to start with at Jamie because she has personal experience in this, and then we'll open it up to everybody. But do you think that learning skills socially, such as through D&D and other RPGs, has an advantage over learning in a traditional setting?
Absolutely, I do. And actually, I'm glad that this question was brought up because I wanted to touch on the fact that most school systems across the country are switching to more project based learning than the traditional, I'm going to learn it from a book or a lecture and take a test on it. So we're seeing in at least the school district that I'm currently teaching in that we're not giving as much homework. We're not giving tests in English class. We are writing and we're doing creative projects and we're working in teams more often. And the schools are really shifting to more hands on learning and what we call deep learning, which is where kids are going to be like doing more experimentation and going out to like work sites to like get hands on experience with things um, and are like getting more hands on experience from experts and things like that. So if students can start to work together in a social setting recreationally, like playing Dungeons and Dragons or any tabletop game, then they're going to have a little bit of an advantage potentially um, in the classroom and then in their workplace because they already know how to work together to create something. They already know how to communicate and assign certain tasks to certain people, and they're probably going to be a little bit more comfortable learning while like engaging instead of just sitting back reading something and answering a question.
I can
Did I
imagine
answer the
that's so
question?
much
Go ahead,
more
Avon.
impactful.
Oh, I wanted to kind of take it from the early education kind of standpoint, because it sounded like you were good. Um, but we don't really have to like go into D&D. Well, we can't really go into D&D for early education because it's everybody 5 and under. So some of these skills are way past their level. However, playing pretend. I remember as a kindergartner running around the playground being like, I'm a Power Ranger. It's great. But like playing the same games with the 5 and under group, and introducing like, oh hey, let's play with Timmy over there nicely because you both want to play with the paddles and sword fight. That's great. But what if we don't do that and hurt each other? Because oh no, there's a bad dragon over there. Let's go tackle this imaginary beast instead. So then they learned how to play together rather than attack each other, which is something I would rather prevent, attacking each other, and something more mythical on the other hand.
Yeah, working together towards a common goal.
Yeah. Yeah, I have to say, I've done my bachelor's and my master's and things for education, and I'd have to say, in all my years of schooling, my capstone class was for my bachelor's was like the best course because I learned the most because pretty much the course was our teacher putting us in groups with people we didn't know and said, here's a program and you have to learn. You take all your business stuff that you've learned over the last 4 years and make the business work, create different materials, different products, and apply money to different spots. Does you need more marketing? Do you need more finance? Do you need more operations or supply chain, whatever it was? And you suddenly were in a group of 6 people who all came from different backgrounds, all came from different unique places in their lives, and they're all in the same class and they're all at the same level of education, and you have to sit down and figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
Your teacher is just a facilitator.
Mm-hmm.
I think I learned more in that one class than I did in my entire high school career, because high school for me was very, everyone is individual. You have a project, you work on your project by yourself. You do this, you have this test by yourself. Once you get to college, like for business, everything is in groups. I don't remember not having, like, besides actual tests, like every project was in groups. Every assignment was in groups. You didn't have to work together, but it definitely helped. And if you said, hey, teacher, I'm working together with these 4 people in a study group, then the teacher wouldn't give you problems for having the same answers, because you came to the answer as a group. Because you decided, hey, we all know these little bits. Okay, this is the best answer. And like working as a group and working socially is how I think people really learn the best. Like the school system, like when I was a kid, was very, you read, you spit it back out. You read, you spit it back out. That's all you do. You read, write, spit it back out. And I feel like working socially with other people, other students, even professors, you learn how to work as a person. You learn how to adult, because you have to. Other people rely on you.
Yeah. And to touch on that a little bit again, like I said, the school systems are really moving away from what we experienced when we were in high school. And capstone projects like the ones you were talking about that you did in college are now one of like the requirements for graduating in Indiana is having some sort of capstone project that you've completed. I don't know how
That's
many
awesome.
people here live in Indiana, but our graduation requirements just changed. And so there are different pathways that students can choose. And really, they have to be able to work with other people. It's a requirement to get your high school diploma, not even your bachelor's, right? So yeah, it's super important. And also, I'm glad to hear that you like really enjoyed those projects where you were working in groups, because I'll have high schoolers who totally dread a project and they don't want to work with other people, and this is just like pulling teeth getting them to do it. But then at the end of the year, they'll tell me, like, or even the following year, they'll tell me, you know, that project we did, that was my favorite thing all year. And they'll look back and they'll remember it. So young people are feeling that way too.
I think a lot of my issues with project work when I was younger was feeling like I wasn't qualified to be a part of the group.
Mm,
Like I didn't feel like I had the knowledge to be able to contribute in a meaningful way. So I was always really self-conscious about being part of a group because I just felt like I was never going to contribute enough to make the other people around me happy.
yeah, I think a lot of people feel that way.
I don't really recall a whole lot of group work throughout my high school or any of that time. It really seemed like it was so much, well, keep taking tests so you can take the big test at the end. Okay. All right. That's
Reaching back to that, Nick, do you feel like after having exposed yourself to RPGs and tabletop gaming, that if you were to go back and do group projects like that again with those same groups, that you would have more confidence in your ability to provide?
No. I feel a lot more confident in my ability to communicate with the group. In terms of my actual skill level, not so much. But I would also I would view it differently now as an opportunity to learn more, rather than, oh, I'm just this dead weight dragging the entire group down.
I think that's why it's cool to have roles in a group in school, because then each student feels like they have one specific thing they can contribute, and maybe that would help a little bit. Just like we have roles in our party, one person's a fighter, one person's a healer, one person's a mage, etc. Sorry, Avon, I saw that you put your hand up. I didn't mean to like interrupt you.
No, it's cool. It was kind of in that weird in between stage. I'd like to say the other end of that spectrum, where I'd be the kid that would be doing all the work in the group work, because I'd like to think I was smarter than everybody else. Like, not to toot my own horn too much, but like, I was definitely on the A side of this team, whereas the rest of my schoolmates were like B's or C's or D's. And I didn't have the confidence to speak up to everybody, and just to kind of like pull that question back, be like, what would I do differently? Is, well, I probably would have more confidence to be like, hey, could you actually do this part of the project while I work on this? And not really like step back and be the wallflower and actually just kind of do it, because I wanted to get the work done, and not really step on any toes.
That's a good differentiate. Yeah, both sides of the coin there. Got one more question, and then we'll kind of open up the panel to questions. So if you have questions for the panelists, you can hop into the panel chat and type those out, and I'll read those off for what we have time for. But this last question here, do you think that digital RPG platforms such as Roll20, Discord servers, Fantasy Grounds, things like that, because of recent events, do you feel that these digital platforms are more or less or about the same helpful for building these skill sets that we utilize in real life?
I think, given recent circumstances, it's definitely more helpful. I think most of these platforms have probably seen an influx of new users kind of flocking to them in light of coronavirus, or the quarantines and all of that. And it's a really nice thing to be able to continue with your groups and working on these skills and playing together and being together, in spite of world events like that.
Yeah, I can actually confirm that. One of my friends works for Roll20, and he said when I was interviewing him, that they have had a lot of new users since COVID-19. So yes, there's a huge influx of people using these services.
It's never going to be as much fun as being at the table, but I'm definitely going to say it's probably much more helpful. Just considering the fact of it's so much easier if it's just all of us at the round table. But using these different systems, you're working with people you wouldn't normally have known or met, or from all over the world. So I think using the skills of communication and compromising, that all really comes together much more using digital platforms.
Yeah, Avon.
Communication.
You might want to start over because your microphone was kind of cutting in and out.
Oh no.
Sounds better now.
Okay, is it good?
Yep.
Okay. Clear communication is what I wanted to add on. Like, at the table you can read your other players' expressions, or at work you can see like how they are doing. But if you're taking work calls, or just doing everything online, you have to be clear about what you're doing, and stating like, oh hey, my character does this, jumps up the wall, and blah blah blah. Well, you gotta either say like, oh, they do it happily, or like, oh no, they're tired, or whatever it is, so then other players can hear that. Here's your clear communication. And I figured that's kind of like the thing that happens over media if you're not seeing us face to face. I wondered how this panel was going to go if we weren't going to do video.
I noticed a lot of us talk with our hands.
I know
a lot of us nod.
It's because we're theatric.
Yep.
Yeah. And
Also, it shows we're listening to, like,
right. But if we didn't have the video or a face-to-face interaction, we would never know that.
Yeah.
Like, I would never know that we're all nodding in agreement at this, right now.
Yep.
Or if I wanted to turn.
Or if you wanted to raise your hand, yeah.
You would have to say silently raise his hand.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the digital platform really helps. It definitely helps with skills. I do think playing in person probably helps a lot with just interpersonal communication and having that video. I think digital is a great backup to that and the inability to do that now. But I think if I could, I would much rather like sit with my friends at a table and joke and mess around. But I haven't really had many times where I've done that, so.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously superior to be able to be in the same room, but I would say a benefit of these digital platforms is something you touched on earlier. The international audience you can bring together. Like, one of our players is from Mexico. He can't meet up with us even on a regular basis. Even if it was like every 6 months, it's just not feasible. But being able to play with him every week, thanks to these digital platforms, I think is a huge benefit.
I think it's been a fantastic bridge builder.
Yeah, I don't know that we would even know each other, or so like some of us might know each other from like meeting in person than playing, but I know I wouldn't know any of you here without that, because I met Joe through Roll20. And then that's how we became friends, and then became group and so on and so forth. But if we didn't have that platform, I wouldn't be here.
True.
All right. Well, I think we're gonna go ahead and wrap this panel up then. If anybody has any last words before we say goodbye, I'll let you go ahead and say those. Does anybody have a final thought?
Yeah, I do.
I didn't hear what your final thought was.
My final thought is, give me that Christian cider.
All right. Thank you for that final thought. Go ahead, Dave.
I think, first of all, I really like DralaCon. I'm really glad that we're doing this online this year. This has been really valuable, I feel like, to people. It helps bring the community together and multiple communities together. And I like being able to meet new people. Like I said, I'm a really weird accountant. I love people, love talking to people. I always have. And I think this has just been a great opportunity for everybody to get together. And I'm glad that I got to participate in this panel, because I see myself as a professional career person, and I know that a lot of people want to be, or they want to do things and further their personal life. And they don't realize that everything you do in your personal life and for fun and D&D and friendships and your skills, they can help you get to where you want to be.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to realize that these are skills. They are something that you can use everywhere. And building that confidence in people to be successful and be the best person you can be. You don't have to be the head of a company or a crazy rich person to be successful. You just have to be the best person you can be. And that these skills will help you.
All right.
It was very inspiring.
Very
Yeah.
nicely done.
Yeah.
Well,
Very good, Dave.
I'd like to say that you all seem like really awesome, really nice people, and I'm glad that I got to be on this panel with you. And thank you for having me. It was really fun.
Of course. Thank you for participating. Thank you, everybody, for being here.
Yeah.
And
Thank you so much, everyone.
make sure you check out our next panel tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. That'll be the next time we have a panel, but we also have plenty of live shows going on, workshops, all kinds of fun games. So I'll see you all later.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.